Great. Okay, so welcome back, everybody. Nice to see some familiar names and faces. That's even better. So we are embarking on a sort of a first of 5 sessions that we're going to do together and sort of unpack the year little chunks at a time. And today, really what we're going to do is just sort of look at those first couple of months that we want to get our materials together and see how where the kids are at and how they're doing. So as we go through today, I'm going to throw a couple of links into the chat box. Some of you will have some of these. We had another person that was not part of our groups in the past, but they're not here today, so I won't worry about that right now. So I'm trying to toggle between people who have got the resources and for those who don't. You will have access to a folder when I'm done. I will show you where that is. I'll show you what's in there and then how you will get into it and that you'll have access to. But that doesn't mean because we're only meeting on certain dates that would be kind of our fixed times. Between now and our next meeting, if you are finding you need something else, just send me an email or a text or phone me or whatever. But also if you look ahead, that will be one thing I'm going to ask you is to look at the November, December before we meet in October. And is there anything in those 2 months that you say, I don't have anything for that, like zero? Send me a text or an email and I will start collecting if I haven't already done so and have some materials for you so that we can put that into your boxes if that works for everybody. So as before, just unmute yourself if you have a question or want to go through something. We do have the benefit right now of nobody being new to the document, so I'm just going to refresh our memories on that, but I'm not going to talk about them. So I'm going to start with our land acknowledgement. In the spirit of reconciliation, we want to acknowledge that this gathering is taking place on traditional lands across the province of Alberta, home to many diverse Indigenous, Métis, and Inuit peoples. We acknowledge that this is a land of traditional meeting ground, giving voice to its original peoples and the story of creation of this country in a way that history has forgotten. So, welcome back. And none of you got stuck in staff meetings today. My morning group was really struggling. They had staff meetings coming out of their ears, so it was tough for them to get on board. So I want to just talk a little bit about the documents. I'm not going to spend a ton of time because all of you do have them, but I will show you again where you can find them in case you're at home and you didn't have a print copy with you. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about concepts and verbs, just a refresher, because we do need that for our 2 months. But we are going to spend some time on the taking inventory piece, just to find out where everybody's at and you yourself, because everybody will be at different places. And then looking at some of the resources that I have for you. So again, just familiar to most of us that we have a terminology change, and that was replacing strands with organizing ideas. And to find that organizing idea, we simply need to go behind the word organizing idea, and that will tell us whether it's number, geometry, time, whatever it might be. The guiding question was there for the teacher, not for the student. It was there to help prompt the thinking of the teacher in order to decide how are you answering that question, that guiding question, how will you teach the students to meet that learning outcome? So it wasn't designed to be on the board, whiteboard, reframed into an I can statement, anything like that. The knowledge and understanding skills and processes are a new terminology for us, CUSPs, new acronym, but really it's the same format of what we've seen in the past. We have a knowledge factual piece, we have skills and processes combined with the general sort of statement of how those combine, and that would help to meet the learner outcome. So all of those understandings together, if a student is successful, will meet the learner outcome. And the literacy, numeracy, competencies, we won't go through those again today, but that was every teacher, every subject, every year. So those didn't change in the 2013 ministerial order. So we have the numbered outcomes, and those number outcomes are not, the document itself is not any different from anything that we have in the Alberta Ed version. The only thing is that we have numbered the outcomes to make it easier so that we can find things and that we can reference them when if we're working in a PLC group. So that first number is just your grade. In this case, it's grade 2. The next letter stands for your organizing idea, in this case, number. The first number tells you this is the very first outcome in this document. This document will never change its order. It will never change its look. It's always going to be the same, unless they change an outcome, I guess. And the 0.1 behind it just says that this is the first row of knowledge, understanding, skills, and processes that belongs to this first learner outcome. There could be more than one row, and as soon as it has a decimal behind it, that indicates to you that there is more than one row. So when I scroll down, I see that there's a 1.2. So it's still the same learner outcome. That never changes. The wording never changes unless the outcome changes. And here's the second row of knowledge, understanding, skills, and processes. And it could be a third one, depending on which one it is. And this one has a third one. Here's your third row of knowledge, understanding, skills, and process, your fourth row, and so on. And the only thing that can change here is either the learner outcome changes. So this is your fifth row. That's a lot. And now we have a new learner outcome. Students investigate addition and subtraction in 100.1 tells you that there's more than one row. And then when it moves from number to geometry, the only thing that will change here is that it'll change to a G instead of an N. And then we just numbered the whole thing. So when you run this off, if you haven't run it off yet, you really only need to run off the K1-2 pages. You don't have to run the whole thing off because you don't necessarily need the 3, 4, 5, 6 unless you are teaching multiple grades. And then you're going to find that partway through the brown, we've inserted the financial literacy. And you can see it from kindergarten to grade 1 to grade 2. Grade 2 is already quite general in the sense that it assumes that kids have a strong working knowledge of money. They know how to skip count with it. They know values of it. So there is some bridging that's going to have to occur there, whether we want to or not, because the children just won't have the background knowledge. One of the teachers I was working with last year who was doing the pilot, and she was working with Jump Math at the same time, and that was new to them, could not get past just doing basic coins. They just didn't have it, and they just didn't have the time. But I think part of that was also learning the Jump Math and spending time on that. So we need to be just cognizant that kids need that K1 really strongly embedded. That's why we're always saying money has got to be the focus for September, October for sure, if not longer. And then we go from there. And it even is in our outcomes for the math as well. So we need to have a really good working knowledge of money. And so that's our numbered outcomes document. Let's go back to our slideshow here. And just a review of include, if that shows up in your sentence. Included means that's required. Whatever's behind it it's a must do. It means it's not the only thing that you do though. So when it says, for example, including algorithm, traditional algorithm, it means that you have to include the traditional algorithm, but that doesn't mean you're only doing that. It means you're still grabbing those good, strong strategies that you had before, good teaching practices. You're still doing all of that where necessary. Such as means that you probably just have an example that's in the statement. You still have to teach it, but how you teach it and what example you use is entirely up to you. And if that illustrative example works, that's in the document, then by all means use it. And if you want to use another one, by all means use that. But you don't have to use it. It means that you have the option and discretion to be quite tailored to your students. So if you had an example that was something that was linked to a big city and you live and work in a small town of 400, probably kids aren't going to connect to that kind of an example. So you need to tailor it to the community that you live in. And then content in parentheses does affect you guys a little bit because we are doing some transformation symmetry, but we're also doing these types of terminologies. We still want to use the math terminology, even with younger children. Even in kindergarten, we use always math terminology. Just when we're talking, we might not only use that terminology. We might go back to sort of the generic, sort of easy, friendly English words that kids would relate to. And then we might flip it. By the time I get to grade 5, I might say, we're going to do translations. Anybody remember what that is? Oh, right, it's slides, right? So again, just making it age appropriate. but we still teach them the math terms. And then lastly, being very intentional and paying attention to whatever the verb is within the context of the learner outcome, because that will determine the activities, the approaches, the assignments, the assessments that I'm going to be looking at. So the context in which I see it will make it be a little bit different in each of those. So depending on what it is they're asking me for in the learner outcome, it might change how I read that particular one, in this case, interpret. Okay, comparison document. This was a big one for us because this really outlined for us the differences between old and new. And the further up we go in the grades, the more new we see, more in the sense of a download than sort of new to math. There's very few new to math. It's just downloaded from another location or another grade. So in our case, for grade 2, we see everything on the left-hand side is you're familiar what you're teaching now. Everything on the right-hand side, those 3 columns, is your new curriculum. The only thing, it's a little out of order because we use the understandings to match to the old learner outcomes because they're worded very similar. The learner outcome itself is pretty vague and pretty general. So we had to use the understandings to make sure we partnered them with the right old one. And if we weren't sure, we checked with the knowledge, skills, and processes. That doesn't mean it's a perfect match always, and that there could still be new things in there, which you see already that are highlighted in yellow. So anything in yellow is definitely new. Because you're going to 1,000 for counting, you might want to visit that grade 3 teacher or borrow a grade 3 resource text, because that's where I'm going to find going to 1,000, counting to 1,000. So that'll be significant. Money will definitely be a support for us there, for sure. Okay, so that's how it worked. We had color-coded things in the comparison document purposefully because it links to the last document. So the number strand, no longer called that, is that reddish pink color. It's now called number with an N. That's my organizing idea. P is patterns, light blue, sort of a maroon color for measurement. T is time for green, and geometry is, I don't know, magenta or whatever you want to call that. And then statistics is sort of a yellowish brown. So as we went through this document, we were looking for not only where are things very similar, and there are definitely carryovers, no question about that, with some very minor pieces that have been added in. And a lot of teachers have said, well, greater than, less than. I actually have always done that, and that could well be the case. It's just it was never explicitly stated in your wording, so that's why it's highlighted. So you may have done it, you may not have done it. The emphasis on the wording of natural numbers needs to be carefully watched so that if you're bringing in 0, that kids don't think that that's natural numbers. Okay, we have to make sure that we don't fall into that piece. And benchmarking is huge. So we want to use benchmarking even with numbers because that will help us, or with money. That'll give us a good head start. And then as I start benchmarking with money and I can interpret what that is, then you can give me some vague number someplace on a number line, and I should be able to get a good sense of how I'm going to deal with the benchmark. Okay, as we go down, we see that there are chunks of yellow that are significant. And a lot of this comes from the grade 3 curriculum. If there's nothing on this side here, that means that there was no outcome in grade 2 that matches what you're being asked to do right now. And so this is completely new to your grade. And vice versa, if there was something on the left, but nothing on the right, it means that it got dropped. Okay, so that was our curriculum. And then the sort of the one that everybody's gravitating to is, those last 2 are kind of important, but all 3 of them work together, is our year at a glance. And remember that the year at a glance is not written in stone. It's not a must do. This didn't come from Alberta Education. It's not saying you have to stick to this. If you prefer to do a different order, you're more than welcome to. We're just using it because most of the boards are just following it. So we'll match our PDs accordingly. So these are the outcomes that large groups of grade 2 teachers have identified that they would do in September, October, and then going on into November. But they also said, and when I challenged them, would you start it with 1,000? Is that even a consideration? The answer was no. We'd be starting small and bridging our way up as we go. And even in some groups, we have one school board where they did not go with 100 here. They said that was too big a leap already from September to October, that they might still keep it at 2050 and make this one the 100. So you have flexibility, as we do at any time. If you find that kids are way beyond this and they're ready to move, then we would move them. If we're not even past 20 yet, then clearly we're sure not going to 100. So we need to make sure that we're at a point where it's reasonable and students can handle it. So we're focusing on September, October. We have these ones for number. We also have time, and time was consistent with what we were doing in kindergarten and grade 1, and that was, the teacher said, we do that all the time. We do calendars, we do looking at the days of the week, we still do what's happening this week at school. So duration would be something that they said would just be ongoing, and they would meet that outcome as they went through the year. That doesn't mean you have to do that, but typically you kind of do that with agendas even then. And then shapes for geometry, that shapes are identified according to geometric attributes. So we're just talking about basic attributes. You're not getting too carried away. You're not solving the whole thing. This is a 1.1a. And the A, remember, indicated that there was a whole list of things, and probably there's no way you could do them all. So we broke them up into A's and B's, although I didn't think that was in grade 2. Okay, and that's it. Then we're already into the next set of 2 months. So again, think about before we meet in October, have a look at November, December, because you're going to be rolling out unit fractions at that point. Is there anything about unit fractions that you haven't done, used, need more of, whatever, because we will hit that one big for sure. That's kind of the foundation to everything that we do, including counting. So we want to make sure that kids understand that. And then we'll look at that moving forward. Okay, any questions on that one? Okay, we'll go back to mine. So if this is our focus right now, students analyze quantities to 1,000, but we're really focusing small, 20 to 50. What are we checking for? Keeping in mind that we do have a bigger leap for sure. There are infinitely many natural numbers, and that would be true of any way that I can even compose and decompose these. There's lots of different ways to do that. Every digit in a natural number has a value placed on its place. And I don't think that we want to jump into place value right off the bat. We can just start smaller to see what they understand about this. They could even create with money. Once we get money going, can they show me what 20 could look like? Could be 2 10s, could be 4 5s, right? They should be able to add those pieces and do that composing and decomposing. What are multiple ways of showing 20, 25, whatever. Students analyze quantities to 100. So we're looking at that. And then natural numbers are either even or odd. So what are some rules that we can use for odd and even? What are some simple things for a child who still can't count and is in your class this year in grade 2? So they could take 2 coins, piles of coins. You get one, I get one. You get one, I get one, right? And then we can see if they're matched up evenly and if there's any left over. Okay, we can talk about that. And then we can talk about odd and even. So let's focus on those 2 months. We've got time kind of looked after, although duration, you might treat that a little bit differently. You could even put that into science for a good portion, and then shapes. So going back to, I'm going to go just to this conversation again, this money thing. Remember that the kids won't have that kindergarten grade 1 background. We're going to have to bridge that. So even that whole activity that we did with kindergarten would be a valuable formative assessment for you at the beginning of the year. Just give them big bags of money, put them in groups of 3 or 4 and say, you know, sit on the floor, dump it out, and then can you make it look tidy, just so that we can see what you have without using any math terminology, without using any reference to money, no names of coins, and just see what you get. Do you hear the word sort? Do you hear the word loonies going together? Do you hear toonies? you kind of want to really nail down who are the kids that are saying that, and then just walk over and just say, you know, why did you say sort? What does that mean? Just tease out and see how deep you can go with them without giving them any math terms. They give you the math terms. So that gives you a good idea of later on who you can partner with who actually knows quite a bit more than somebody else does. Money, when we look at, these are your learner outcomes. These are really what you have to do, and these are what they say. So in theory, and this came from one of the school boards we were working with, because we looked at what might it look like in PowerSchool. This is what it might look like in PowerSchool, because if that's all we're supposed to report on, that's pretty minimal. And what bothers me about this as a principal, it bothered me that primary teachers, in my opinion, always do 2 report cards. You do 2 sets of report cards, what's required for the system. And then you write wonderful, elaborate Word documents, which is the only thing that parents really want and need. But that's 2 sets of report cards as far as I'm concerned. But I don't know how we get around this without giving parents some explanation, because this is not very informative for me as a parent, that's for sure. So we kind of need something there that will help them out. And there is a document that I can show you. Kids will not know what a coin is. Okay, that may be completely foreign to them, and we don't want to tell them until we're ready to really dive deep into those coins. And we can say, you've got a variety of coins. Anybody know what that means? And just get that from them. But it's not a term that's going to be familiar. When we asked the grade 6s, some of them looked at it. So what is a coin? And that would fit with them not being able to tell me what $2.85 was in a bag of actual money. Out of 37 students, I had 0 in grade 6 that could tell me what was in the bag. They didn't know the coins. They didn't know what they were. Some of them would hold them up and say, what is this? Is this the loonie or is this the toonie? Like, what is this? And some kids would bail them out, but they didn't know. And it's not a reflection of them not being strong math kids. It's just where we are coming out of COVID, where we are in our world of math right now, of not having an emphasis and use of money. We've used all kinds of great manipulatives, but I would almost argue that one of those manipulatives hasn't done people any favors, and that would be our base 10 blocks. I would always use them, and I will continue to use them. But kids don't understand what they really are because there's no context for them. All that you give me is these columns, and you tell me when I get 10 of these guys, I should trade them for one of these guys, and when I get 10 of those, I should trade them for one of those. But what does that mean in the real world? Doesn't have a lot of meaning to me. If I started with money first, that would make some sense to me then. Okay, so here's what our goal is right now. And you can see right now it's even gone down to 20. This is a different version of it that I grabbed because that's what they did. They went 20 and then they went 50, 20 to 50. I don't mind either way. But what I want to do is flip to this one here, keeping in mind that it was 20 to 50 that we're targeting. There's some value in being able to see, and if you have your documents and you want to look at them instead of my screen, feel free to do so. But what I wanted you to be able to see is the knowledge, understanding, skills, and processes. Because what I want you to do now is take about 5 minutes to look at what is it that we're focused on. What is it that the knowledge, understanding, skills, and processes want me to do? And keep in mind, this is not all happening in September. There'll be elements of it. So in some cases, you might get one that's completely finished, but seldom. They're definitely carrying over into October. And we have this one added in as well. So they're compositions of groups. So the question is, where are you at with these? What do you have? And what don't you have? So let me just give you a second to amalgamate that. You don't necessarily have to put anything in the chat box. It's more for your own personal. But where are you at as far as things that you may or may not need, or that would be different than the way you started typically in grade 2? And that's always the biggest question. What do you usually do, and how is that going to change, if it is going to change? So when we look at some of the things that are on here, if I know nothing about money, I actually going to have to spend some time learning money for sure. And I would suspect you're going to have a lot of kids that will be in that boat. But I can also even if I don't know the different names of the coins, I can say, can you find a coin that looks the same? Put them all in a pile. What are all the things that are together? And we can even do some work on whether they're odd or even. Do I have an odd number or an even number? So can I line them up 2 by 2? And is there anybody left tying their shoe? And that's usually what we used to use. If there was somebody left behind because they had one foot gone and the other foot is still on the ground, that was kind of like an odd man out. In a real world context, you might want to take pictures of big semi trucks. Semi trucks always come in groups of double tires on each side of the car, except the front tire, so that they can see what double looks like +1 to make it an odd number. And we can count them. In fact, that's how I taught my grandchildren to skip count. They live in Calgary, I live in Camrose, 3-hour drive. Every truck we went by, I mean, they couldn't pass enough trucks. And we would count every set of wheels because my granddaughter was struggling with math and my little guy was way ahead of her, 3 years younger. So we would count tires as we drive by. We would go 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, +1 is 11, and then ×2 is what? So we would always do the doubling at the same time. And that was incredible how quickly they picked up on that. But that also, even when he was in kindergarten, he said, when you don't count the front number, it's an even number every time. I said, would it be even every time? He said, yeah, because all the other tires on the other side are double too. So it's that kind of math talk that we can do with students and we can let them see. Or trains. Right now, trains have double cars that go on them. Very few have singles, right? So we can talk about the difference between the even and the odd that way. But we can just do it by sharing. They can take their pile of whatever coin they have. They don't have to know the name of it yet. And they can learn it as they go by simply pairing them up or sharing. You get one, you get one, you get one, you get one, right? So do we have an even number or did we have a leftover? Is typically what they call it. We can't do skip counting until I really know those numbers, right? A number line will help, but a money is where it's focused on right now. So let's, again, target if we can use money for every manipulative first, as much as we can in September, October, till they get so proficient at seeing them. They know what the value is. You said, I want you to skip count by 10. What would you like to choose? We would hope that they would say, I would pick a dime, or I'm going to pick a $10 bill. Right? Or a $5 bill, putting two of them together. Like, what is their thinking behind that? So getting them to deliberately think in terms of money first, and then we can bring in all that other abstract stuff after and still use it. There's nothing wrong with it. Anybody else have any concerns that they would see coming into September, October? We're obviously not covering all of these, but no, good to go. All right, let's look at patterns. A pattern can show increasing or decreasing change. A pattern is more evident when the elements are represented, organized, and aligned in oriented in similar fashion. And the teachers are just saying we could introduce it. So what we found was students made trains out of the money. If we left them on the floor long enough, they had sorted them all. And then what they did is they made a train. And the train would go from usually the largest coin to the smallest coin in size order. Okay, Roxanne says her concern would be having enough manipulatives for the students to use. Yeah, so is there a lot of money in the schools right now, or is that something that you guys can access?
No, I went on a hunt in June through all of our little cubbies and spaces in the school that we hide manipulatives, and I came up with hardly next to nothing. I mean, the last time I remember teaching money was probably 20 years ago. Was it, you know what I mean, for grade 2? I haven't been in grade 2 long. I went back to kindergarten, grade 1, but I think things kind of just got cleaned out, and, you know, being in a relatively new school, we don't have any.
And that is true. I mean, we haven't had a big focus on it. It's not like it ever disappeared and fell off the map, but it's just that we just kind of always assumed that everybody would carry on with it. And then all of a sudden we got into this tap world and plastic in our pocket. And now, like I said, we have this world of people walking around who haven't got a clue what place value is. They would go and sign a mortgage agreement and not have a clue that there's a percentage that they could probably have a conversation about. But if you don't know anything about money, then you just think, well, it's just a number. And the question is, how many houses do you think you're going to pay for? You know, like it's a concern. And that is the concern that brought financial literacy. So it's not a bad thing to have. And I used to teach COM in grade 11. And that was the one thing that kids said. I loved doing the financial part because I would make them go and sign up with TELUS or whoever. At that time it was AGT. They had to go and get a phone, and they had to go get an apartment, and they had to go and do it and just get somebody to mock sign it off saying that they qualified. But some of them would come back and say, they won't give me a phone. I say, why not? I don't know, maybe because my phone, I don't know, they won't give me a phone. And they say I have to put down $150 deposit. And I said, well, that's typical of a first time connection. They just want to make sure you're going to pay your bills. Well, I don't have $150. And I said, well, then you don't have a phone. But it was just that real life thing. But right now, I think we've got lots of kids that graduate. We just throw them out and say, okay, they're good, but they're not good. They don't know what they're doing. We got adults that don't know what they're doing. We have a parent who came when she found out. In fact, I'm doing 3 sessions in Red Deer in October. And that was the concern of parent council is they said parents heard that money was coming back into the school and they panicked because they themselves had not worked with money. And so they didn't want the kids to come home and ask them questions about money because they didn't know the coins. So these parent councils have purchased a whack load of money, and they're going to be handing them out to the parents that come that night so that they can take a kit home and learn it themselves. And that is where our reality is at, unfortunately. It's scary, but it is. And those are the pieces we need to deal with. So hopefully the kids will have a new generation that will meet that. But in the interim, you still need to have something that you can do with them, right? And it could be just visual, but it's nice to have something in their hands too that they can use as well. So in that pail, I would actually grab some wooden, and I did that in kindergarten even. I grabbed some flat 2D shapes, wooden shapes. They were rectangles. Some of them were hexagons, some were pentagons, triangles. I threw them amongst the money. I just wanted to see what the kids would do when we said clean it up and make it look a little easier to see, if they would put them in some particular place or reasoning why they did. And it was interesting to hear some of the kids even took the hexagon and put it with the loonie, because the loonie actually had straight sides all the way around. It was in a perfect circle. And we said, why did you put those together? And they said, well, they're not really smoothly round. And so they look the same. So wasn't bad thinking. Not sure that that's really the way the loonie was supposed to look, but whatever. So these are pieces that we can still do all with money right off the top. But again, we could create a number of different screenshots where you give them just a variety of things that are up on the screen, and each group gets their own, and they can just drag those coins into some kind of semblance of make it look better. And you can still have that same conversation with them. So that would be a way around it if we don't have enough tools for them to do that. Patterns, again, we can use our hundreds chart if we're trying to see how well they're doing with their counting, how well they're doing with their basic addition facts. So if we're focusing on 20 to 50 or just 20 initially, however you're going to start, you could use those basic facts, and that would also give us a pattern. But again, we used money. We let the kids show us they'd made patterns on their own. They made big, small, medium, that type of thing. And then kids were just building patterns as they went along, or they built designs on the floor with the different coins. So again, they understood what patterns were. We didn't use any terms of core. All of that can come as we start going and unpacking. So what I would hope is that we don't focus on money just to learn the money. We have to learn it, but we still need to do some other outcomes at the same time. So wherever we can address a number of those beginning outcomes, which we can, then I think we're that much further ahead. Okay, I'm gonna leave the time one for now. So here's what we're looking at for shapes. So the shapes are defined according to geometric attributes, and they can be visualized for composition. So I would leave the compositions. We don't need to build a stack yet. Let's just figure out if they even know what an attribute is and they remember it, and what kinds of attributes they remember and how they could put things together. New terminology: sides, vertices, faces, surfaces. For some kids that will be new, for other kids it will not be new. That will make total sense to them because they've already been using that language. So kindergarten, they have to know all the coins, all the bills. They have to know color, number, image, and size. So that's kind of our starting point if we don't know that in grade 2. Grade 1, I need to know them all. I need to know their values. I need to be able to add and subtract with some of those. I need to be able to skip count with them. We have skip counting too, but I have to get the basics of the skip counting behind me before I can do the other ones. Debit and credit cards, all of those pieces, I might be leaving that until well after Christmas, till I have a really good sense, right? That's not going to happen right away. So again, it's not everything's getting chalked off in the first 2 months of school. We might want to set up that classroom economy that we talked about. So if you have little helper jobs that kids do on a regular basis, and that's the way you run your class, then maybe those helper jobs get a paycheck attached to them at the end of the week, you know, whether it's 25 cents or whatever it is. And they each get their own little jar. And if they have their own jar, they put whatever they've earned that week into their jar. If you need more money, then we just gave them vouchers. We got the money back so that we could use it in class. We gave them a voucher, put it in their jar. And they understood what a voucher was. So that we said it was like a mini check. And we talked about what checks were, even though that wasn't in their necessarily in their curriculum. But what it does is it gives equity to a child who has nothing. If they've never seen money, it could be because there is no money in the home. And we can't put them on the spot and expect them to answer questions if there is no way they could actually physically see money. So ways that we can create equity in the classroom right up front would be to have something like your own little piggy bank that's in class, piggy bank, bag, whatever. So for grade 2, if I don't have any sense of money, I can't really have a conversation about sharing, donating, giving money. And it's a big ask if you have a child who for the first time on a birthday got some money, and then we have this conversation about it's a big ask about giving a donation. If they've never seen that money, that child is going to cringe, even though it's a fake scenario that we created. That's a hard one for them to swallow. I finally got my own $5 bill, and now somebody's talking to me about donating the money. So again, having that classroom economy might be the easier way to start it. And it could be a way too that we can get around not necessarily having all the money. They could deal with just some picture money that they have. There are ways that you can print it. There are places that you can print them. If you can print them off in color, kids can have their own bills. It's just a lot of cutting. And if we can get away from that, it's kind of nice. Okay, so in this bowl for grade 2, I would definitely add some 2D shapes. I would make them even some pattern blocks. I would throw them in, and they could even be pattern blocks of the same shape, but a different color, just to see what kids do. Do they put them together because of shape? Do they separate a yellow hexagon and a yellow triangle? Like, what do they do? So using some kind of an activity like that. This goes along with what we talked about. I went through and highlighted some of the words that right up front, very first thing with this activity, just dump it on the floor. All of these could be met by money. We can start all of them with money, and this is in kindergarten. So just basic counting. Who knows how to count? Who knows words? Who knows numbers at all? Grade 1, do they know any of the bills? Do they know the value of the bills? So moving forward, they are going to be skip counting by 2, skip counting by 5s and 10s. So obviously we have to make sure that they know that in grade 2 before we even get going on the 20s and 10s or the 25s. I can do length. Is a toonie longer than a nickel? I don't know, which one is the toonie? Okay, let's learn that. Which is the nickel? Let's learn that. Which one's longer? So I can do some of these outcomes as I'm talking and learning money at the same time. Are 2 dimes longer or shorter than 1 nickel? Are 2 dimes longer and shorter than 1 toonie? Right, just having that comparative language again. For grade 2, decomposing into groups. So if you're starting small for 20, can you find 20 of something or something that adds up to 20? You're going to have some students that can add up to 20 with different coins because they know them, but some of them won't. So just 20 coins, and then can they decompose and compose them? Can they redo them? Basic sums. We're looking at a half and a quarter. So we are talking unit fractions. And this doesn't have to happen right off the bat. And that's why we have it sitting in November. But the notion of a half of anything, half of a $50 bill is half of 100. That's a realistic place to start if they know the values. So you could create something like this using that cash register. I'll share that link with you again. But we could create a screenshot that has a variety of different coins, variety of bills added on. You can take this off and just put multiples of things on there, even some attributes, and just ask them to sort them or not sort them, clean them up so it's easier to see. Kind of looks messy right now. I can't see things. Can you clean it up and see what they do and see what terminology they use? So again, if you don't have enough of the actual physical coins, this is as close to perfect as you're going to get because they look exactly. So can they put them together? Can they give you a rationale for why they did? Can they end their discussion with you, tell you, oh, well, I put all the toonies together. Which ones are those? These ones. Instead of me saying, oh, yeah, I see all the toonies. Let them tell you which ones they are because some kids have these mixed up. A coin. What's a coin? I don't know what a coin is. So we may have to spend a little bit of time going through that grade 1, and I would probably start even with that in the first week. This is very realistic. What are the coins? What's on the coin? Brown, maple leaf, not in my pocket anymore. So in this slide deck, I'm going to show you all of the things that go along with this kind of an idea. But as I was creating this slide, I found this version, which is done on Teacher Pay Teacher. And this takes quite a while to put these together. This resource that I'm going to show you is only $3. So if it's something that you want to save yourself some time, because I can't share it out, I don't have the licenses for all of you, but this is what she's got on there. I would take this off the bottom initially, because they don't need to know that right off the bat. Let's just get this part sorted out. And she has all of the different coins, all the bills, the hundreds are in there too. There's even some activities. Can you match the name? Because they have to know that from kindergarten, what's the name, and in grade 1, to the right coin. And we still had students, even in grade 3, who just kind of measured the circles to see whether they had it right. Something like this. Once they know the coins, my instructions to students were, can you go from greatest coin value to least value? So again, using some of the math terminology they're supposed to know. So toonie, this is what you get. Quarter, nickel, dime. So that tells you that the child that does that thinks that size determines value. The bigger, the more value it is, as opposed to this is a dime, 10 cents, this is a nickel, 5 cents. So whenever you have them group coins together and you ask them to order them, be careful what you put here, because some coin, they can actually get the right answer by sheer luck, just by thinking bigger, next biggest, next biggest. Here's one for less than greater than, which is involved in grade 1 and grade 2. They have the same for the values for the bills in here, and I would put some hundreds in there as well. But we could take this. Let me just throw that back in the chat box again in case you don't have it. So this one, I could use this, create a screenshot or a screen for each student in pairs, triplets, whatever you want to put them in, where this whole thing is full of random money. And they have to sort through to clean it up. We don't tell them what words. And that would give them opportunities. Remember, there's a coin missing here. So if you didn't enable that coin, if you go down to your gear down here, there's one that's not lit up. Just check it. Go to the X, and that gives you the 50-cent piece. So now I have 2 pieces, which will be my half eventually when I talk about unit fractions. This is important for them to know, and eventually how they're going to start putting that money together, because that's how we will build our unit fractions with them. And again, you can change what you drag out. I can drag out 1 at a time. You can change the background to white if you want, but I can also drag out 2, 3, or 2, 5, and 10 at a time. So in the event that I want them to see $1,000, I can show them what 1,000 looks like. So these particular slides are interactive. So when I go, you will have these shared out to you in your folder. When you go out of slideshow presentation, these are, the kids will be able to drag these. And you can change whatever coin you want. You can change the interactivity of these if you want. So they can just grab coins. You can tell them what you want. If you're just checking for names of it, you can add another coin in. You could say, I want to see 10 dimes. I want to see 20 nickels, right? Just what is it you're checking for in that 20 to 50 number at the beginning? Same with this one. I can do a part whole is what I'm doing. So I could put just starting small. I could put pennies across here. I could put a couple down here. What am I missing? So if they really still don't know, they could pair them up. And the pieces that are left over is what's missing. So basic addition, basic subtraction. See where they're at. Change the value if that's what you want to do. Use these just as a coin counter. Who cares about the value or the name of it? That just the more they use it, the more they see it. But this would be my preference, because this size, and you have this template, this size would be easy to do with any size bills. You can do it with any size coins. And then I tend to use Cuisinart rods. Once the kids start getting money really down pat, I start throwing Cuisinart rods into the mix because they're very similar. And I can do the same things with them. Just so they have another connection. The subitizing cards are something that the students should have in their hands. Every child should get one of these. Cut them up, put them into a little Ziploc bag and let them have them. They can have 5 minutes at the end of class. Just say, go find a partner, play a game of war. Whatever they turn over, they have to call out instantly. Whoever calls it out, the 2 of them together or the highest number, whatever your rule is, they get the pair, right? So it's just, again, it's just that quick recall. And they need that for doing their math facts when they get into grade 3. The faster they can do that, the better they are. And fluency for addition and estimation. So this is the example of the money bingo, and you would have access to this as well. And this would give you an opportunity. There's 25 unique cards. So you could play bingo with them. Just run this off. If we don't have enough coins, at least we could check to see whether or not they know their coins, and they can have a little bit of fun doing it at the same time. So there's 25 unique cards in your folder. You could play Go Fish, right? Run these off, cut up the cards. You deal out whatever, 3 to each person. Have a pile that you draw. You know, I can say, Cynthia, do you have a toonie? And if she does, then she has to give it to me. And if I have one, I partner it, I can pair it up and put it down. If she doesn't, then I have to draw a card. So the idea is just to partner, pair, put down, partner, pair, put down. First person to clear out all their cards or gets the most pairs, whichever rules you're using, wins the game. So show me the money template. You could use this later with show me anything. Show me 400, show me 600, like whatever you want. But for now, show me the money. Show me what could make 22 cents. What are combinations of 22? What are combinations of 55 cents? What are the different ways you can show me? 4 different ways around here. So whatever you're checking for, from a number perspective, you could use the money for at the same time. And then you have these templates that, again, if you're just learning the money, they can sit down and let's say you put a 4 here, I put a 12 for nickels, I put 20 for dimes, and you could make these iterative, or you could just have them grab them and put them out here. And do they know those numbers? Do they know how to count to 20? Yes. If that's done, let's move it up and go to 30, right? That's your next target. So don't worry about adding or anything like that here. The name in the top, when you see them saved, will tell you what pictures are in the mat. So in grade 1, they should be able to handle this 5 frame and be able to convert at some point that it becomes 5 cents. Excuse me. And that 2 5 frames will give me 2 nickels or 1 dime. Or I can skip count by 5s. I can see that I've got this. For grade 2s, they should be able to see this as well, that I've got 5 5s and it should be very quick subitizing for them. This is going to lead us to grade 3 for multiplication. I'm going to use money for that as well. But this also helps set up my unit fraction thinking so that they can see what those are going to look like when I start putting them on a number line. Or 100 pennies. This is 100 pennies, a 10 by 10, 10 rows of 10. It's a dime, 2 nickels. Again, it sets up my unit fractions. So when I'm setting up money and I'm trying to get students to understand the value of money, identify money, I want to use a number line at the same time. So changing the numbers on my number line to cents allows me some liberties here. In this case, I'm going to start with the easiest, which was a dime. If I'm going to reflect this in a conversation, I'm not ever going to talk about a fraction off the bat. The word fraction shouldn't even show up until well after Christmas. We would do our unit fractions without using the word fraction, and certainly without using the word denominator and numerator. We want students to do it from the perspective of a relationship. So when I put something on a number line, when I put, let's say, this on a number line, if I wanted them to write it as a relationship of what is this to the whole dollar, this is my first dime or first distance, just 1 dime out of a possible 10 that will make my 100. So I'm writing it as a relationship of 1 over 10. I'm not calling it numerator denominator yet. This is 2 dimes distance from 0. Or 2 possible dimes have been used out of a possible 10, and so on. And that's how we had grade 2s and 3s build unit fractions by themselves. We didn't give that to them. We just got them started. It was their responsibility to figure out the pennies, the nickels, the quarters, put it all on there. So using the number line, again, now it's still counting. You're still checking what they understand about 20 to 50. You're still checking, can they skip count by 10, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. They see it, it's money. So we're still connecting the money. So it's just being intentional about what we use. This is another one of those questions, just like show me the money. You have a group number at the bottom. So you could set this up 4 different, 5 different, whatever number of differentiated groups you need. So you just group number them at the bottom. You can change this value at the top. And these are iterative. They can grab and they have to show you whatever you gave them. So if you got some high flyers that are ready for 100, put it in there. If they're at 100 and really fairly confident, then give them 150. Just let them really muddle through it and see what they do. So as I was saying, this is one way that I can move from money also to another manipulative at the same time. So I can connect these and I can start to, this will eventually get me back to my base 10 blocks, but this helps me build my unit fractions. This is where I'm going to build some of those as well. I could take multiple levels of dominoes. So these are basic dominoes. They would only go up to 6. You could get the ones that go to 9. You could get the ones that go to 12. So I'm doing subitizing and I'm going to quickly look at them. What's the numbers that I roll depending on how many dice you gave me? Whatever the sum is, if I've got it, I take it off. Whoever gets rid of all of theirs off of their pedal first wins. But there's lots of ways that I can do this. And again, sometimes we put dollar values. We took wooden blocks and we put dollar values on them. So we know that the best dollar value you can have is, if it's 6 and 6, $12. So that we use those numbers that we knew could appear, but we just changed them to dollar values to see what the kids would do. You are going to be checking for adding numbers eventually, and we want to know whether or not they can remember that they're going to be carrying. Now, they're not doing a ton of this, but they are going to be doing addition of 2-digit numbers. Instead of throwing students under the bus right away, because sometimes when they see numbers lined up right away, they just panic. We have found that if you use dominoes and turn them sideways and just line them up, what do you see? I see a 2 and a 0, it's a 2. I see a 3 and a 1, it's a 4. Pick easy ones and just get them going. Just the mental addition again of math. Don't give them numbers that carry right off the bat where they have to regroup. Let's just give them simple ones to get their confidence going. Or I give you what's the missing numbers that are going to go in there. So that has to add up to what I see here. So there's lots of ways that I could use dominoes, not just for subitizing and estimation. I could use them for addition. I could use them for subtraction. So the grade 2 kit that we were talking about, this is an adding machine tape. And what we did is the teacher and I were talking about is how do we get these kids to think of what 1,000 looks like? So we had those 10 $100 bills. We could grab that out for sure. We actually did it too with $10 bills to show them how many $10 bills they would need to make 1,000. And they actually had fun doing that. But we also wanted them to get a sense of what does that look like in some kind of a distance? Like what is 1,000 look like? So we took an adding machine tape, we rolled it down the hallway, and we took 10 meter sticks. And we just simply marked them off from 0 to 100, 100 to 200, 3, so that kids could see that. We put 100 centimeters, 200 centimeters, 300 centimeters. At the top of it, we put 100 cents, 200 cents, 300 cents. So that when I ask them, could you show me where you think 120 might go? We could start having a conversation about where's halfway between 100 and 200. Where do you think 120 might go? Closer to 100, closer to 200. If they've been making change, there's a no-brainer, but that would be more of a grade 3 conversation. But this is one way that we can also show them what 1,000 looks like. And that is quite a concern for a lot of teachers right now is, I don't know how I'm going to get them to visualize 1,000. Here's what we put into the kits that worked for the money based on skip counting that they had to do. If they didn't have enough, they go to the back in the bank. So they go to the teacher, has a cash register. They can't point and say, I need 4 of those. They have to say, I need 4 20s because I'm short $80, or I need 8 10s because I'm short $80. Whatever rationale they come up with, doesn't matter. So this is what it looks like. For the first 100 centimeters, I marked off every 5 centimeters. After 100, I only went 100, 200, 300, 400. So again, it helps with the estimating when they see the first 100, where maybe 120 might go. And some kids went back and they took their hand or their foot and they go, oh, 20 is about that much. So, because we wouldn't let them use a ruler, so then they could figure it out from there and see approximately where it would go. So they had 100 centimeters, but they also had 1,000 cents. So again, they were dealing with that number of 1,000, counting to 1,000, skip counting by hundreds. The subitizing cards, we talked about those already, and this is what the kit looks like. It just fits in a small bin. These are the cards that I created so that each child would have their own reference card. So if you're saying, who remembers what a reflection is? Can you find the card that has it? It does say it on there, but they just held it up. If they have 5 minutes left, it was, okay, Cynthia and I are going to partner up, and I'm going to talk to her about everything I know about what this represents. And it's just basically talk time. Okay, these are the higher level mats, again, that we can use for skip counting. We can use them for addition. We can use them for identification. We can use them for 10 of these equals 1 of these, or 10, 5, and then 10, whichever way you want to go. Okay, so let's also look at, and it does come up fairly quickly. So if you were going to do, let's say, dumping, even if you did it on screen and you have some different shapes. Circles are something that they have to be able to identify. Triangles are something they have to be able to identify. Patterns are something they have to be able to identify. So in First Nations, when it talks about patterns with First Nations, Leah Dorian is she writes a lot of children's books, First Nations, but she's also great at the art that she shares, and you can download it for free, a lot of it on the website. But she has lots of the different shapes in there. So we use that for sort of conversation with students. But you are also tasked with looking at a winter count. And so the teachers were saying, I have no idea what a winter count is. So what I've done is, I'll just go back one more here. I've given you a little bit of info on that first slide, and I've given you a picture of a buffalo hide already that you can use these slides all you want, that show you what a winter count is. So winter counts, basically what would happen is, in a winter count, an elder, whoever was responsible for making the decision about when the tribe would move, due to food, due to weather, whatever, all of those things that were contained. Whenever they would make a decision, they would reflect on canvas 2 things in the year that made a big impact. So maybe there was a fire, right? So you would see a fire and you would see that the buffalo were dead, or you might see a picture where all of the buffalo are gone, but the people are there, there's nothing. So it was like a living history of what happened to that tribe as they moved around. And it wasn't a weekly, it wasn't a monthly, it was generally twice a year. Now, some of them do it more than twice a year. And there are definitely some patterns where they even suggest children should do their own winter count on a monthly basis. In other words, what is an event that is significant to them that they would draw a diagram of on a canvas? So here's some pictures of the actual one. They had a grant that they got for this, and it's really beautiful. But they also had a lesson plan that went with it. So I included that in here as well. If you're looking for circles and you want a little bit of information about the medicine wheel, if you've never listened to Elder Mary Lee, she's amazing. And what she does is she talks about why the medicine wheel is there. Why is there a dove? Why is there a centerpiece? Why does the pole in the teepee stand the way it does? Because it's actually a woman's cape, is the story that goes with it. So I've included the link for the narration of the stories. If you're interested in learning about that before you work with the kids, because I was just looking for circles, but if we can hit some of the First Nations understandings at the same time, this is great. So I've put that in there for you. I've got tons of First Nation stuff. The other thing was that teachers were asking for, I need more links to First Nations because kids in my class, I need them to see, and I need to be authentic when I do it. So Kaitaskisa is one of the places where they took the information and they took our current curriculum, not the new one, and they indigenized it. So at the bottom of this picture, you'll see that there's a link here. When you click it on, if you just keep scrolling down, there's lots of info, but keep scrolling down to the bottom, you will see that the grades come up. Now, some of grade 1 will still be relative to you, grade 2 and some grade 3, but right now let's just go to grade 2. And so when you indigenize the curriculum, what you're looking at is typically trying to adjust for when I teach something, I'm looking at the seasons, because the seasons have huge meaning to First Nations. And also there are some things that they do specific to some seasons. There are some things you don't do in a certain season. Storytelling typically is in January, the winter season. So what you see here is sort of a color coding. Blue is the winter, fall is the orange, you've got the green is spring, and the yellow is the summer. So when I look at, this is kind of your math poured out with science, where might I see them in different seasons? But let's go down to the specifics. Here's where your curriculums are, current curriculums. But remember, we're outcome based, so we'll always find our curriculum, regardless of what grade it's in. And here I see my old curriculum, I see my numbered outcomes, But when I scroll down, I will see that I also have this relative to fall, that this is typically things that we would do in fall because I can go outside and find examples of it. If I'm not sure about some of the things, they will also give you some suggestions. They'll change it over into the seasons. Where might I do it? So there's lots of different little neat things that will help with some of the things that you're going to be doing. If you're looking for stories, actually, that's a good one, because when you see that symbol, it doesn't matter when I teach it. Now, some teachers have said, so does that mean I can't teach it? And the answer is no, of course you can teach any of these in any season. But if you are trying to be cognizant that there are some things that you would only teach in certain seasons and you can make it work, great. If you can't, then, and that's not a focus that you've been given direction to do, then don't worry about that. This is just provided because some teachers were asking for some stronger links. So again, here is your medicine wheel. This is what Elder Mary will also talk about, that there's 4 different quadrants. I see a pattern, right? Not all patterns will include all of these colors in the same order, but I see that I have different directions. I see that I have different elements. I see that I have different seasons. That's the cycles that we can talk about. I have wellness in each one of these, et cetera, et cetera. And then there's a special plant in each one, like we got sweetgrass, tobacco, and cedar. All of these have meanings, and they all have importance to First Nations. You can click this one on and it will give you some of the seasonal wheels that we were talking about, like the winter count. If you wanted to make your own, there's a template in there. Wilfred Buck is an elder who does space science. That is his absolute passion. And if you're looking for patterns, you're looking for counting, you're looking for different arrays, he will take students through and talk about the different stars, but then he'll also tell them the story of why that star was called this and how did it connect to Earth. So again, it's that link that we can make wherever possible. IKWC is also one of these places. I'm going to put this one in here into the chat box. You want to grab this one. Again, if you're looking for something specific, they have a virtual library. Now, when you come to this site, and I'll just show it to you, it'll have all this login information. Just ignore it. And just go to virtual library. And in here, you'll see that it goes by grade, division. So when I go to K-3, I have choices. And within here, I have traditions, I have lands, I also have numbers. So there's math related items in here. Some of them are stories, some of them are songs, some of them are symbols. Then I have animals that go along with this. So this is just a place where you can go and whatever's on there is free. You're allowed to use. They have videos, they have stories, anything that you want. And there are definitely great math ones in there as well. And then this is the moving forward learning site that you'll find that to do. So these are, I just want to give these to you up front because as we go through the year and plan, I'm going to grab lessons from different places just so that you know where I'm getting them from. I'll put this one in the chat box. Grab that one. So this is coming from Moving the Spirit series, but if you scroll down, you're in Learning to Do, and you scroll down to the very bottom, you'll see that all these bubbles come up, and it's related to a grade and a subject matter. So in some cases they have lots, in some cases they have a little, but there's lots of information in there, and the lessons are generally made for you already, so you can go and grab some of those that might relate to what you're teaching, might not relate to what you're teaching. Okay, so I'm just going to show that to you so that you have it. Again, circles, Mother Earth, circle reflects unity. It reflects that everybody's the same. Nobody is more superior. and it's generally the part that we relate to when we talk about Mother Earth. Okay, before we go to this final one, are there any questions so far? So we have lots here that we can grab just in reviewing of counting, but also to meet some of the needs that we have for our number, all right? So when we go to this moving forward site, I'll put it in here, but it'll be in your shared folder that I'm going to give you as well, or your shared slide deck, sorry. Okay, so we rearranged this already because over the weekend it was getting too cluttered. So you are working in a cohort group right now. You are working in the planning for the new grade 2 math cohort. Oh, I'm going to get that H up there. So when I click that on, what you see is today's work that we're going to do, and the recording will be there as well. So the only thing you need, and you'll get that pushed out to you probably about 4 o'clock today, is a login with a temporary password, and then you can change it when you get it. And that's what will get you in here. Okay, it's only open to the people that are in that cohort group. When you come in here, and this is how I'll set them up every time, I'll do it by the dates that we meet. And if any of you phone me or text me and say, Chris, do you have anything on this? If I hand it out to somebody, I'll also post it in here so that you'll know. So you can come and go here. Like you don't have to download everything right off the bat because you'll always have access to this. So here are some subitizing. If you're needing just some quick slides, you want to do a quick warm up at the beginning of the day. How are they seeing the numbers? Here's some pre-made slide sets for you. Here's a coin set that you can use as well for counting within 1,000. These will be the slides that I shared for you already. So they're already prepared. You can download them. The links will be active in them, so you can use whatever you want, doesn't matter. And then here are some money games. So remember, you're going to need some of those pieces. I didn't put the bingo in here. I see that. But if you want, is there anybody that wants the bingo? Because I can put it in. Yes? Okay. Yep. All right. I'll add it in. Put the bingo game. I just put it into grade 1 and kindergarten, but I thought I had it in here too, but I didn't. Okay, but I did put a number of other things in here. Wants and needs would be the financial literacy piece, but we wouldn't do that until spring because they're not going to be in any position to make those decisions. And here are some First Nations links. There's the lesson plan that I was talking about for the winter count, and it has a template in it that you can use. And then general resources. These are the things that I was just talking about that may or may not be of help to you, depending on where your kids are at. Once you know them a little bit better and see what they know, there are some things in here that they can use for sure. So again, these are open to you to use whenever you want. The kits, remember, are found in additional resources. So that's where you find your grade 2 math kit. And if there's something in the grade 2 math, like if you don't want the whole thing, or you just want to see what did we use it for, there's a video there. But here is anything that was in the kit that was printable is down here. So you can, again, you can use those whenever you want, doesn't matter to me. You also have that parent resource in here. So if you're wanting to use something to send home to parents for a little bit of a generic version of, I don't understand what that outcome means, or when my teacher is doing number, I'm not sure what they're doing. This is a little bit more user-friendly language for parents. So feel free to download that, use it. If you want to just take parts of it, whatever, or not, it doesn't matter. And then you have an interactive vocabulary in here as well. So your year plan that you looked at, this one you can't download, you can only go into the website, but it's open. You don't need a password to get into any of this stuff. So when you come in here, anything that's highlighted in green, if you don't know maybe what that word is or how you'd explain it, just click it on and you'll get an example, you'll get maybe a lesson plan, you'll get things that you can share with the kids. So every word pretty much that's a concept or a topic that we're going to teach in Math 2 has been highlighted already. Okay, so you have the money app. The notes are already in your file folder. You've got the Show Me the Money template. You have planning guides in here. And if you're not familiar with the Alberta Education Planning Guides, these were created for the current curriculum that you are in. But they're about 26 to 30 pages long, each one. They're specific to a topic. So in this case, you're talking about adding and subtracting numbers to 100, which is relevant to you. And what they start with is a pre-assessment. They have a post-assessment, and then they have activities in between if for the kids who just didn't get it in the pre-assessment. So there's some what do I do now kinds of things. The one thing I do want to show you is this book right here. It is got a note behind it. You can download the whole book on the website, from the website, but technically it's considered a violation if you keep it on your computer, because unless you have subscribed to the Access copyright, then you don't really own the document. But you can download it, go in, grab a couple of pages from it, not keep it up, and then go back to it. What I want to show you this on, though, is because it has so many things that you could use. Okay, let me just bring it down here. So many ads on this thing, unfortunately. So if you can ignore all the ads. Oh, shoot. Okay, well, I'm going to go in here. They have samples. This is the financial literacy part where you have a store. I have more for grade 2 in my arsenal of materials that we can use. But it also has these templates that are already created for you, and they're in color. So you could use them. You could use them interactively on the screen. You don't have to print them because they are designed to be done on a computer where the students just fill in the outcome and they could take your screenshot and give it to you. So this gives you lots of different places. And then when you go to the very top, it talks about coin identification, adding basic coin identification. So this is quite a little book. I would suggest having a good long look at it because I actually purchased it. I don't have the copyright license. And so I bought it. I think it was 15 bucks. I just bought the whole thing. I think it's 380 pages or 180 pages. It's a big document anyway. There's videos included in it. So if you're not too sure, you can go. And this was designed for Ontario. When Ontario came out with money in their curriculum, their teachers were scrambling as well. And so they created this particular one. I was working with them at the time, so I knew it was there. Everything else you already have either the link to or it's already in your downloaded shared slides. Okay, any questions? Now, some of you have seen a lot of these slides before, some of you have not seen any of them. We had to get through this beginning piece, and as we start moving forward, you're going to start to get a lot more different ones because of the topics that we're going to start hitting. My question to you is this helpful? Is there something else you want in addition to, like you're not going to hurt my feelings by saying, nope, don't want this, I'm looking for this. So feel free to unmute or just put it in the chat box. This works, this doesn't work, would like more of whatever, just let me know. Or send me an email, whatever you feel comfortable with. Okay, and everybody went silent. Okay, I'm just going to stop our recording here.